Stuart. How are you, brother?
I'm good. Good to be here.
Yeah, Stuart. I'm really interested and excited to do this one. You're a couple of things. One, the first person who ever had a wall of shoes behind them on my podcast. But two, you're the first person who's ever had a personal logo. And I thought that was awesome. I'm like, dang, I need to get a personal logo now. But Stuart, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I would love to hear kind of the whole history. To kind of walk me through how you got into this field, and then kind of the developments and things you've been able to do, and then we can talk about where you're at currently.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's easy to look back and see the dots connecting, but when you're starting out in life, you never know how they're going to connect. And remember, I was telling my son when he was going to college, don't worry about it. Just all you have to do is put one dot on the board and then the next dot on the board. And when you get to be 60 and look back, you'll go, oh, look how those dots connect.
Yep.
But it doesn't work that way. So, you know, I think kind of uniquely, I grew up on a cattle ranch in central Nebraska.
Okay.
And when you do that, you have a couple opportunities in life. One, you don't have a lot of money, but you have a lot of opportunities to work.
Mm.
And you're also working hand in hand on a business with your mom and dad. You know, you sit around at dinner and you're talking about cattle prices and what needs to be fed and what needs to be cared for. And so you're in the business. And I think one of the blessings of that was I never saw my dad get a paycheck from anybody else.
So
You know, the only
classic
paycheck he,
rich dad, poor dad, like every entrepreneur who comes on here goes, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You just had to live it, right?
yeah. Well, I think that's right. I mean, my parents were products of the Depression, and so my mom would use tinfoil and then save it, and we'd use it, clean it, and use it again. I mean, that was kind of the ethos. And as I got older, I found out tinfoil really wasn't aluminum wrap wasn't that expensive. We could probably just discard it after the Thanksgiving meal.
Yep.
But it also provided opportunities to solve problems. When you're 2 or 3 miles from home and on a horse and you're 6 years old and the fence is broken down, how are you going to fix that without going back to the shed? And you're 6 years old. Well, you figure it out. You put some wire together and then you use a stick to tighten it because you're not strong enough to tighten it with your hands or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it kind of gave you sort of a overconfidence or maybe maturity beyond your age because you were licensed to solve problems. In fact, you were expected to solve problems. You weren't expected to ride back to the ranch house 2 or 3 miles and tell dad, hey, there's a problem with the fence at the north end of the ranch. You didn't want to hear that. If the cow was out, you got in the neighbor's pasture, you went and got it. And you were at 5, 6, or well, not 5, but 7, 8, 9 years old, you were licensed to do that. And when you're 7, 8, 9 years old, you were driving a tractor all day and helping with the ranch work. So that was helpful. And um, so I think that's kind of the underpinnings for my story. I tell my wife everything I learned in life, I learned on the ranch. And she said, well, I wish you would have learned a little bit off the ranch. You might be a little easier to get along with. But I mean, one of my favorite sales lessons was we lived on a dirt road 7 miles from town.
Mm.
And you probably don't even know what a dirt road is, but in the summer they get really dusty when you're driving. And my dad would say, now, boys, if you see a big dust cloud and you see that dust cloud slowing down and you see the cars slowing down to turn into our driveway was a quarter mile long. He said, and if you see it's a nice car, he says, now between the time that fella gets turned into our driveway and he gets to the house, you figure out what you're going to sell him.
Mm.
Because if he's driving a nice car, he's a salesman and he's probably got lots of money. So if he's out here trying to sell us seed corn or whatever, or mineral for our cattle or supplements for our cattle, he said, you sell him a horse, you sell him a cow, you sell him hay, you sell him something because he's got money.
Mm.
And that was a pretty interesting concept. And again, we were empowered at a very early age to sell something, and dad liked the price, that was great, or he didn't like the price, that was great.
Mm.
And when I was 9 years old, my brother was 11, My mom took us to the bank, had to drive 50 miles to the bank. And we essentially borrowed $10,000 from the banker, Lyman Stuckey. That's a Lexington State Bank. And of course, he was the owner, the family owned the bank. And we bought 26 head of heifers and a bull and got in the cattle business. And my brother and I are still in the cattle business together. And that paid for a private high school and private college, which is a pretty remarkable.
Mm.
And um, somebody asked Lyman, they said, well, the bank inspector said, well, why did you loan these boys money? And Lyman said, they said, well, do they have collateral? No. Do they have a rent? No. Do they have experience? No. Well, why the hell did you loan them the money, Lyman? He said, well, they got a long time to pay it back.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And
10
but his father had banked with my grandfather.
Wow.
He knew we weren't going anywhere as a family. So that teaches you something too about relationships that go beyond contracts.
Mm. Were you doing dairy or beef?
Beef.
Still same
And
business that you're in to this day?
well, my brother and I bought, essentially had a cow calf operation back in the day, but now we buy yearling steers. And so we buy it 500 pounds in the fall and sell it 1,000 pounds in late summer. We just liquidated everything for the year,
Mm.
about a month ago.
Mm.
Thank gosh, because when Mr. Trump tweeted about lowering beef prices, it took about 250, $300 a head a pound out of cattle. So we'd actually liquidated our final 300 head the day before he did that. So
Mm. So you said
for
that
once we got lucky.
it paid for a private high school. Was that your idea to go to a private high school, or was that, the only option? That doesn't sound like something that I would have invested in if I was, 13 years old.
Well, it's sort of family tradition. And by the way, it's not the thing that most people in central Nebraska did. I remember my neighbor saying to my dad, they said, well, well, we just want you to know we don't think very much of shipping boys off to private school. My dad said, well, that's good. Then don't do it.
Yeah. Right.
But it was, everybody thought we were going to reform school. But my mother had gone to this school. And really, I got there because I'm dyslexic. And the local school, and I don't think to their fault, but they basically told my family that I would not graduate from high school.
Mm.
I was not college material, and I really wasn't academically qualified. And my mother just refused kind of to believe that. She thought I was capable and smart. And despite the fact that I didn't spell well and I couldn't read, I maybe only a mother's persuasion, but I went to Principia, which was in St. Louis.
So you're
Um,
living there basically.
yeah, boarding school,
Mm.
away from my parents. And, I mean, what's better than having being in high school and not having to live with your parents? I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean so your freshman
think of the
year,
trouble you would have got in.
yeah, you're
I actually went in
14,
eighth grade.
8th
I went
grade.
in eighth grade
Wow.
because they said they wouldn't accept me in high school because um, my grades weren't good enough and they needed a year to kind of get me prepped.
Oh,
And my brother went because he really was an adventurer and wanted the adventure of it.
yeah.
And he wanted to see something else. And he was a very good athlete and a very good student. And so for him, it was a choice. And he really led the way. But I remember getting down there and the boys in the dorm, the dorm master said, hey, we're going to go out to McDonald's for Saturday night. And I'm like, back in Broken Bow, Nebraska, McDonald's was a lousy clothing store.
Ah, right.
And I'm thinking, well, who would want to go to McDonald's? So I sat at home, and did something else. And they come back with hamburgers and fries and shakes. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And they
Yeah.
said, oh, that's McDonald's. So I'm in eighth grade
It had
coming
been
off the
over.
ranch.
Yeah. Wow.
And then the next week they took me to something I'd never seen, which was a movie. And and the first movie I went to see was The Sting, which was it won the Academy Award. Robert Redford and Paul Newman, and I still
Mhm.
think it's the best movie ever made. Maybe it's because the first movie I saw. But anyway, what that did for me really was Principia was a great place for me because they built on my strengths, and I got into running.
Yeah, I was going to ask where does the running come in?
Yeah.
Sorry to stop you, but I just read this book. You probably like it, called The Perfect Mile. Have you heard of it? Do you know about this
Oh yeah.
book? Yeah. Well, there's Wes Santi, right? He was kind of out. I don't
Yep.
know where I can't remember, but they pitched it as he's kind of in the middle of the plains, nowhere, America, and he got into running while he was out there, running from place to place on the farm, and it just made me kind of think about you and the similarities there.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm from Nebraska, so I didn't know there was a thing called cross country. Everything was football, but at 135 pounds at that point, I probably wasn't going to make my way in football, and I wasn't that fast. And I got into running, and that we had a great running coach. His teams won, I believe, 95% of the meets that he entered. His
Mm,
team won. I mean,
mm,
that's how good he was, and he inspired me. And I really like the idea, going back to the ranch, if you will, that if you worked hard and you put in an effort, you could be about as good a distance runner as you wanted to be.
mm,
There weren't too many limitations if you were willing to put in the effort.
mm-hmm.
And I also like that sense of freedom. And first summer I go home from boarding school, he says, "Well, you need to run about 35 miles a week." And so I started running 35 miles a week, and by the end of high school, I was putting in 100-mile weeks at times,
Wow.
and I found I had an aptitude for marathon running.
Wow. But by
My seat,
that young of an age, because most, I don't know what the high school kids are doing, nowadays, but I don't think our cross country team when I was in high school was probably doing more than like, 7 or 8 mile runs. I think it was pretty rare they'd do anything like 10.
well, and this was the great thing about my coach. He realized that I wasn't very strong, very fast, but I was strong.
Mm,
And we put a lot in, and he did not tell me to go run these miles. It was a very natural progression over 3 years. But by my senior year in high school, kind of a funny story. My junior year in high school, I was the third fastest 2 miler in the state of Missouri.
all right. Give me
And
some times, my man. What do you think you were doing in
I,
high
I
school?
I ran 9:32.
That's moving. That's very, very fast.
Oh yeah, but here's the story, Alexander. My teammates were running 9:11 and 9:13.
Wow. That
So I was the third fastest guy in the state and the third fastest guy on my team. And and the way it was set up, I couldn't qualify to run in the state meet because they would only allow two people from each school to enter.
Right, right.
After that experience, my coach went to the organizing committee and changed it so now you can qualify on time. But anyway, it kind of got me a little upset. I can be a little bit obstreperous, and I went out and ran the Boston Marathon my senior year in high school. I was 17 years old.
Wow.
Uh, Will Cloney was running the race. Those are the guys that threw Catherine Switzer out of the race.
Oh.
And right, it was old school. There were no mile markers. There were no aid stations.
Yep.
It cost me $25 to enter. And only after I entered and was accepted did I realize that you were supposed to be 18 years old and I was 17. So I was the youngest guy in the race.
Mm.
And I went out and ran 2:29:32, which
Wow.
was high school, yeah, high
Wow.
school All-American status. One of the third fast, I think it was the second fastest time in the nation.
What's that
And
that
so
that pace is like what, 6 minute mile, somewhere in that radius?
a little under, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
I ran a
right about
little. I
six
ran a
minutes.
little, so not nearly at that
So,
level, but I know a little.
well, it's all the same, right? I remember that race used to start at noon in Boston. I remember getting in the cab going to the airport at 6 o'clock that night and seeing people still running. And I thought, my God, how good a shape do you have to be to run for 6 hours?
Yeah.
And and now I'm probably running the pace that those people were running. And I do realize it takes a lot more effort than you think to run slow,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is a little discouraging.
Yeah.
But this whole running thing really became sort of the center of my universe, if you will. And it allowed me to excel. when I wasn't a great student, if you will, but the discipline of running allowed me to really become a pretty good student. I mean, I graduated from college probably with a B plus average, but I worked my butt off.
Mm.
And, uh, and, um, and so I was really trying to avoid going to college. And I had read, my track coach was teaching me to read, and he gave me a book by John Steinbeck called Travels with Charlie. I don't know if you've ever read that book,
I
but
haven't, but yeah, I've heard of it.
it's a great book. He circumnavigates the United States, stopping and talking to people.
Hmm.
And I thought, oh, that'd be fun, run across the United States and talk to people and see what you learn. And I was looking for sponsors, called Nike. They offered me 25 pair of shoes. Kellogg's offered me lots of boxes of cornflakes, but I didn't really know what I was doing, and you know, never raised money. And so a friend of a friend said, "Hey, my buddy is an inventor, and he invented one-handled water faucets, mixing valves. Instead of two, one in the center, right? Levers.
Okay.
And he invented the pull-out spout on a kitchen sink. I can tell you that story. He didn't make any money doing that, but
That's a bummer. I got one in my kitchen. We got one in our
doesn't everybody?
building. Yeah, I know, right?
Well, he was ahead of his time. That the plastic that he put in the tube to come out, where you would drag it out, would split because it was hot and cold. So the plastics weren't good enough to handle the temperature change, and they would just create a crease right down the line.
Mm.
And but it was called the Lawndale faucet. Anyway, he says to me, "Well, Stuart, I'm working on putting air in shoes, and maybe my shoe won't make it across the street, let alone across the country. Maybe you could help me build my shoe." And that is one of the most fortuitous breaks any young kid could get.
Did he just think
Um,
because you're a runner, like that was enough for him to be like, I don't know, maybe he'll help?
yeah, well, and I got good reviews from my coaches and people he knew at Principia. And so I remember thinking, what the hell does this guy need with me? He was about 65 years old, which now that I'm there, I don't think is that old. But at the time, I was thinking, wow, that's ancient.
Mhm.
And keep in mind, this is an air shoe before Nike had an air shoe on the market. And it's right above me here, where the air moves from the heel to the toe.
Mhm.
And so I go out and start making shoes in his shoe repair shop.
Was he
But
paying you at this time, or?
yeah, he paid me $500 a month. He bought a shoe repair shop, which was really just a shotgun alley, right?
Yep.
And I would make shoes during the day, and then sleep in the office at night. And I would test the shoes. I'd make a pair of shoes, and then I'd test them in the morning and tear them apart in the afternoon, make them, or test them on a run, then tear them apart, fix them. Different ways to put air in shoes. But he was from a place called Pebble Beach, California,
Okay.
a place I had never heard of,
I've heard of their
literally,
I've heard of their golf course.
right? And I'll tell you, that was eye-opening. And so I would do that work. He gave me $500, slept on the floor of the office, and then he gave me a car to drive, a Grand Prix Pontiac maroon. And I thought I was living large. And then I would stay in his guest house down in Pebble Beach over the weekends, and
So
work on the shoe some more.
this is a generous guy. I mean, you're working hard, it sounds like, but must have really seen something in you from a young age.
Well, he saw more in me than I saw in myself, I think.
Hmm.
And so I did that. And all of this time, though, I'd set a goal when I was between my freshman and sophomore year in high school to run in the Olympic trials.
Okay.
I said to myself, if you work hard and you're dedicated, you can run in the Olympic
For
trials
the marathon, were you thinking at that
for the
time?
for the marathon, because I was too slow to do anything else.
Okay.
And I felt like you could control it. And I didn't set the Olympics as the goal because I didn't think that was realistic. But I thought about anybody that worked hard and was dedicated to running the Olympic trials and the marathon. All you had to do is work hard for a couple hours.
Two
And I thought I could do that.
two quick questions. How fast do you think at that time the Olympic trials were, and you said you did like a 2:30, but what was the delta between where you were and where you needed to go?
Well, when I set that goal, I was a freshman in high school, and the Olympic trial standard was 224, I believe.
Oh, well, you're
And,
pretty dang
and
close, it sounded like.
well, yeah, but keep in mind that 229 was after I set the goal.
Got it.
Right, my first marathon, I ran uh, 250. Still good for a high school kid.
Still great for anybody, okay? If you're
Yeah,
going under 3 hours, that's like,
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
well, times have changed, a lot more people are going sub 3, right?
yeah.
But
And then the Olympic standard went to 221.30. Um, and and then I found out about a month before I was trying to qualify that the Olympic standard had moved down that year to 219.04.
okay. Okay.
And they set that standard by the fastest 100 times run in the country the year before. That's how they set the Olympic trial standard at that
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
And so, I am training very hard, and I think this, the fact that I had this goal and I had done well as a senior in high school, running a 219 was probably another reason he hired me. I was a good enough runner,
Mhm.
and and I think he wanted to help me out.
Yeah.
So um,
Can I just
but
can I just ask
yeah,
a question? What was
sure.
training like at that time? Was training, kind of primitive? Did you have any idea of any scientific thought process on running, or were you just going out and running as fast and as long as you could?
Well, by today's standard, I guess you would say it's somewhat primitive. I mean, if you took water with you, it was cheating. You didn't want to tell your coach you stopped when it was 90 degrees on a 20-mile run and got water at the gas station, because that was viewed as cheating. So there were some things that were what you would call primitive. But again, my coach this guy was very intellectual. He graduated number one in his class in mathematics at the University of Illinois. He was a graduate of Juilliard School of Music as the top pianist. So he understood skill development really well. And
Mhm.
he was no, didn't yell, didn't scream, didn't treat you like, he'd always say, I don't train you, you train animals, you coach athletes.
Mm.
Um, don't talk to me about training. You're not the dog. And so he really worked with us. And so his approach, he had really discovered Arthur Lydiard out of New Zealand. And if you remember, and you're too young, but Arthur Lydiard out of New Zealand dominated Olympic distance running from the early 50s to the mid 60s. Now, if you can dominate distance running from the island of New Zealand, you know how to coach.
Mm.
And my coach was one of the first people in the United States that really bought into his philosophy, which was long, slow distance training, build up your base, and then make sure you take time to strengthen, and then take time to sharpen. So I would say that my coaching was pretty darn sophisticated, and still much of what's going on in terms of training is built around what my coach Jack Irely and Bill Simon did. So, in the summers or off season, we would build up, you go 65, 70, 75, then you'd go down and have a 40-mile week, a rest week. So
Mm.
every fourth week was a rest week.
Mm.
And he made very sure that that rest week was not hard. And
Mm.
uh, don't go play basketball, don't go play frisbee at the beach or whatever. It has to be restful. So every run had a purpose, and every run within the week had a purpose. Like if you ran 20 miles on Saturday morning, Sunday it might be a 10-mile run, but it was light.
Mhm.
And the day before the 20-mile run might be your shortest day. It might be 6 or 7 miles light. And if you felt a strain, or if you were getting injured, I mean, I never missed a day of running in 22 years. And I really attribute it to the fact that we knew how to rest. He preached sleep, and we varied our workouts. And he really focused on, for me, endurance. So he, a lot of people go train for a marathon and they run, a bunch of 8, 10, 12 mile runs, 8, 10, 12 miles, 8, 10, 12. He would push us to say, you got to go out there and focus on your long run, go out and run 20 miles, go out and run 24 miles.
Mm.
Um, so I don't think of it as primitive. I think the nutrition aspect of it, the gels and the goos and the hydration aspect of it are much more advanced now. Um, but it was not just go run as hard as you can, as long as you can. We put a lot of emphasis on trails,
Mm.
not running on concrete, running hills, mountains. Spent a lot of time in the mountains above Mountain View, California, training. I ran a lot of miles at the ranch on gravel.
Mm.
Um, so no, I would say it was relatively sophisticated.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm not sure we've actually gotten better. I think you can't pretend to work hard. And by the way, if you look at the American Times now, the top 100 American Times, I'm not sure they're any better than they were 40 years ago
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in the marathon.
That book that I read, The Perfect Mile, they kind of talked about that, how like American distance running like really kind of hasn't progressed that much since the 80s and 90s. I think they talked about why they thought that was, but I don't remember exactly what they said. But
But
y-
it's
your
it's
training,
getting, yeah, they're getting better now, I think. I mean, with the Brooks program and some of the stuff the shoe companies are doing, but you know, but I mean, for a long time, I know I would look at the marathon and, and rate and like in Boston where I'd come in, I don't know, I'd be the 50th American. I'd make the top 10.
yeah, yeah. But it sounds like your training probably was maybe then a little more advanced than a lot of people at that time. Do you think that's fair to say?
I do think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
I will also say the most amazing thing about my training was that I ran a marathon. Um, I ran a marathon pace within about 22 seconds per mile, or 22 seconds per 10K. So 4 10Ks back to back within 22 seconds of my 10K PR.
Wow.
Um, and I just didn't have leg speed, but I could stick the needle and just endure.
Now, because like ultra marathons have gotten so much more popular, 50s and 100s and 200s, do you think if that was more available to you at that age, you'd have been like, yeah, let's do 50, let's do 100?
I did miss that. A buddy of mine got involved in it, and I just, I had run in the Olympic trials, and I really walked away from. I really ran, I think, the race of my life to qualify. I felt like I had nothing left to prove, and so I just wasn't motivated to go do it. I'd set this goal to go to the Olympic trials for 8 years. I'd worked every day. I'd run 26,000 miles to do that. And so by the time the ultras came around, I just didn't have, it's like, what am I going to prove? I see guys go back to high school and, they're still trying to get the high school scoring record because they didn't get it when they were in high school. And I just didn't, I just didn't have anything left to prove. And I didn't think I could prove it running ultras. The second hardest thing I've done athletically, though, is run the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim in one day.
Mm,
And that was 48 miles. And so that's an ultra, I guess. But I still have friends that are going out and running 100-mile races, and I just can't motivate myself to endure that much pain
yeah.
at this point in my life. And I applaud them, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't appeal to me. And I think it's, I meet some track guys who just, road racing is just beneath them. It's just
Mm,
gross. That's not real racing.
mm,
And, and yet I kind of feel about marathoning that way. I feel like, that's real racing, you know. So,
Right. Not a
uh,
800 or a 2 mile. Come on, guys.
yeah, yeah. And so, go out on the roads and, that's, going in circles. You're just a little hamster. And so I kind of have this little bit of snooty bias that road racing is real racing and that ultras are something else. But look, I got involved with the HOKA brand, as you know, when HOKA only sold 800 pair of shoes, and so I got to meet some of the great trail athletes in the world, and so I have a great deal of respect for them, and I understand that is racing,
Hmm.
and it may take more courage than about anything else. But I sort of like that that halfway point between tracks and ultras,
Yeah.
and you kind of like what you're better at, right?
Hmm. Well, let's put a bow in it. So you do qualify for the Olympic trials then.
Well, I got to Boston my senior year in college because I was working on the air shoe. We couldn't get it off the ground, and so I went back to college, and
And sorry to interrupt,
my
but
se
did you think about running in college? Because it feels to me like you go join a cross country team, you're going to have some great coaching, amenities. I don't know. Were you fast enough at that point to go run in
oh,
college?
I was running in college.
I
Yeah,
like for the
uh,
team.
yes, I
Okay, got
ran.
it. Got it.
Had great friends, and yeah, we had a pretty good cross country team. In fact, my teammate that was the guy that ran the 219 in high school, he went on and won 3 national championships. He was my best friend. In college, Division 3, won the Division 3 national championship in cross country, and the 5 and the 10.
Mm,
And he, even in the Division 1 meet, he would have been an All-American.
mm,
So we had a good cross country team and good camaraderie. And so yes, I was running for the Heisman, but my focus was to qualify for the Olympic trials.
yeah.
So halfway through track season, I told the coach I was headed to Boston to run, and they knew what I was doing. And so I get to Boston. I look at my log. I've run 26,083 miles. I think I'm ready.
Hmm.
And you had to run 2:19:04 to qualify. And and I ran 2:19 flat.
Hey, couldn't even stop for one more drink.
And to think of that. Um, and so that's pretty fortunate. But I'm also smart enough to realize I ran the race of my life. I think I ran as well as I could have run. And that's a really fulfilling and rewarding thing to know that you've put in the effort and you've extracted from your abilities everything you think you could give.
Hmm.
And that was rewarding. And I've also said I've got a lot of credit or a lot of attention for qualifying for the Olympic trials. And yet I'm really clear that if I had run 5 seconds slower, I don't think I would be a different person or a failure.
Mm,
Because I think even if I had run 5 seconds slower, I would have at that point run my best. But it was cool to set a goal when you're a freshman in high school, chase it and achieve it. Um, by my senior year in college. And of course, all of this, I met the inventor in footwear. Footwear is critical to running. And so it all led to this, if you want to call it a career in footwear. And, I mean, that's like giving a little boy a keys to the candy factory. I mean, I'm not out here solving, cancer or something, but I really have enjoyed this idea that I can be around uh, the sports I love, and I can maybe contribute to making better product. Now, I was back on the ranch a few weeks ago, and one old rancher neighbor comes over and he sees me there visiting the ranch, and he says to my brother, he says, "Hey," and I'm around the corner. He doesn't see me in the shop, and he goes, "Hey, Jim, what does your brother do?" And as only my brother can, he kind of tugs on his hat. And he goes, "Well, apparently, if you get pretty good at learning how to cushion shoes. And he does this with his fingers. If you learn how to cushion shoes pretty well, he says, apparently they'll pay you to do that because my brother's been cushioning shoes for about 45 years.
That's hilarious.
And and I think that when you think about it, I mean, the way my brother described it, the fact you can make a living cushioning shoes is almost absurd.
So you've qualified and you feel like I've given everything I have to give to like my, if you want to call it your running career. Where does your business career start to take off?
Well, um, I think the biggest thing I would say about the running career is that it taught me so much about a business career.
I'm
Perseverance, sticking with it, staying with it, uh, hard work, dedication, all of those things I learned on the ranch. But my business career, I don't know if you'd say it took off, but I mean, the lucky break in business was the air shoe, right?
mhm.
So I'm out here. I've got this now 67, 68-year-old boss. He's not a great salesman. So he sends me out on the road to call on shoe companies. So I get to call on Rob Strasser at Nike to try to sell my air shoe. I call on Gib Ford, the president of Converse. I call on all these presidents of shoe companies all over the country,
Did you have a
right?
fully complete product at that time, or you're only
We
doing
had a
like
proto
the sole?
we had a, we had a prototype. No, we
Okay,
made it into a shoe,
got it. I just wasn't sure if
and
it
we're
was just
showing this. But here I am, I'm in high school and then I'm in college and I'm on the road calling on. I was sitting in Gib Ford, the president of Converse's office, the day that Nike signed Michael Jordan, and Gib Ford, an Olympian from the 60s, tells me why Nike has just wasted their money. I will never forget that.
Oh
He's this
boy.
long, tall Texas, and it had tones that are not pleasant, but he said, "Oh, they're just spoiling that boy. They'll never get their money out of that boy. Look over your shoulder. Here's how you sell basketball shoes. You got the Warrior series, that's Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Julius Erving in team colors. That was their, well, those guys in Oregon, they're kind of snowflakes. They don't know how to sell this." Or Rob Strasser, and you've probably seen the movie Air. I mean, big old Rob Strasser, bigger than life, and he and Peter Moore. I got to know those guys. Rob puts his arm around me one day. He's a big old bear of a guy, and he said, "Well, Stuart, I'm not going to buy your air shoe, but you're going to make a lot of money. You want to know why?" Like, I'm depressed as hell, and he goes, "Well, I'll tell you why. Because you can see it, feel it, and touch it. And if you can see it, feel it, and touch it, you can sell it."
Mm,
Keep in mind, this is when Nike Air was not doing well. And he said to me right then, he said, "We have a different idea about how to make air visible."
okay.
So it wasn't successful until he put that window in. And I've
Yeah.
always wondered, well, did my thing inspire him to put the window in, or was he doing that before? Because he told me if you can see it, feel it, and touch it, you can sell it. And everybody else in the industry was telling me to hide it.
Oh.
I got to grab this picture, but we were putting it on the outside of the shoe.
Mhm.
This goes through an air channel in here. So this is an air pad. When you step on this, the air goes back here. When you step here, the air goes through here.
For those just listening, it just looks kind of like a rubber sole, that
Yeah.
you're hiding it underneath, colored rubber. Um, Unlike the Nike Air that we all know, where you could see onto it with the side.
Yeah, it wasn't an airbag. So, but anyway, here I am in college going and calling on presidents of shoe companies. And believe it or not, I would get in their offices. Arnold Hyatt at Stride Right, and I did my research. I love history. And his secretary says, "You have 15 minutes." He's sitting there on the Charles River, in Boston, and the great Stride Right Corporation that hadn't had a losing quarter in 28 quarters, or I mean, it's some phenomenal financial record, and he's got his Boston tweed suit on. But I do my research.
Mhm.
and his secretary, I think her name was Shirley, says, "You have 15 minutes and I'm coming in there to get you out because Mr. Hyatt is busy."
Mm.
And I walk in there and he probably picked up on my Nebraska accent. And so I start going through my pitch and he goes, "Hey, wait a minute. Where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from a cattle ranch in central Nebraska." Well, how old are you? Well, Mr. Hyatt, I'm about 19 years. Well, and he goes, "Well, can you tell me how you?" And I said, "Mr. Hyatt, Shirley told me that I have 15 minutes and she's coming in here to get me out of here. So I would love to talk to you about this, but I have to go through my pitch or I've got to go through my pitch or she's going to come and throw me out." He goes, "Stuart, I run this place and you've got as much time as you want. Now, how did you get here?"
Hmm.
And so we talked for about 30, 40 minutes. And then I said, "Well, Mr. Hyde, I have a question for you. What was it like running Bobby Kennedy's campaign for president?"
Hmm.
And he literally teared up. And he said, "Nobody's asked me that question in 10 years."
Hmm.
And so I met all of these people in the footwear industry. Now, none of them bought my technology. I went to 94 shoe companies with this technology, and all of them threw me out.
Mm. So the goal was to what? Do like a license deal or something like that? Royalty, or just they bought, give you guys 3 million bucks, walk away, it's yours now?
No, we were trying to do a licensing deal where we'd get $1 a pair. We wanted to get a royalty.
Hmm.
And why George Cole, the inventor, decided that $1 a pair was the right amount, I'm not sure,
It
but
sounds
that's what
nice.
he wanted.
It sounds
Yeah,
nice.
it's nice round number.
Yeah.
But for 8 years, I took that thing around the footwear industry and got rejected 94
And
times.
let me just ask this. Was he paying you all the 8 years?
No, he would pay me to travel and, he would do nice things for me. But like in college, I was in college and then I would work for him over the spring break. It's kind of like an internship.
Hmm.
I became the first Nike intern. I got to work at New Balance one summer because I wanted to learn the shoe business and worked for Jim Davis. Jim Davis is one of the all-time great individuals in footwear, wonderful man. Jim taught me a great lesson about marketing. Jim said, "Well, let's go for a run at lunch." So I just went with 3 mile run or jog with Jim Davis, the owner of New Balance. And, I just pulled on a t-shirt. And one of my good friends was a guy named Craig Virgin. He was a runner in Southern Illinois, a 6-time Olympian, I think, or
Mm.
6-time. I don't know. He held every American record from like the 5,000 meters to the half mile.
Hmm.
And he had given me a t-shirt and he was sponsored by Adidas. And so I'm
Oh
out
boy, I
running.
knew where this was
I'm out.
going.
I'm out running with Jim Davis, and we get back in this dinky, dusty Everett Street office, leaking pipes over your head in the. It's the only place where I showered where I felt like I was dirtier after I left than when I went in the shower. Rust everywhere. And I get undressed to get in the shower. And he goes, "Hey, Stuart, can I have your t-shirt?" "Oh, sure." He takes it and just rips it in half. And he
Uh,
said, "I never want to see that goddamn trifoil again on you." And he handed me 6 brand new New Balance t-shirts. And I go, "Oh, this is working out pretty good."
yeah.
But he's a wonderful guy. And so I get to meet all these people, right? And that was a blessing. But I was really kind of the village idiot in the footwear industry for taking this technology, this air shoe, and getting it rejected and rejected and rejected and rejected.
And presumably, are you thinking at any time, can't they just kind of see what I'm pitching and go take the tech? Like, I don't really have a whole lot of leverage in this situation. You talked about the Nike situation.
Yeah, I did. I just couldn't understand why all these so-called experts couldn't see it. I mean, they're saying, "Well, what happens when you have a flood? What about a blowout? Why do you need air?" And it's like, you don't understand the marketing appeal. Well, Nike's there. We can't do air. Well, this is different. I mean, does General Motors have different, not have air tires because Ford put them on first? I
Hmm.
mean, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
And anyway, long story short, on the fifth try at Nike, they saw it and we got a contract in about 2 weeks. on the fifth time, and it became the number one best-selling walking shoe in America.
Mm.
And as a division of Reebok, it became bigger than about 50 of the companies that had rejected it,
Whoa.
which I always thought was fun.
That's a crazy stat. How
And
fast does
that,
that thing go with Nike? I'm assuming, that takes a build up. They got to put it in the tech and get it into the shoe.
you mean with Reebok?
Well, I heard you say Nike, but
Oh,
I see.
no,
You sold to Reebok. Nike had their own. Gotcha.
yeah, we licensed to Reebok, and it took about kind of from start to launch. It takes them about 18 months. I think they did it in a little less than that.
Mm,
And walking was a big category at that time. And they didn't, frankly, particularly execute it well. They always made it too hard, which is still a shame in my view. But, we sold a lot of shoes. And now I go to these trade shows and I'm suddenly, instead of being the village knucklehead, I'm the village genius.
hmm
And I didn't think I'd change too much. It's kind of the difference between 219 and 21905. More outsider deal than inside. And I found this idea of carbon fiber, and I helped a company start selling carbon fiber to footwear back in the late 80s. And then pretty soon I found another technology that we licensed to Nike for tuned air, and we sold it to the Pentagon for blast mitigation. Never sell the Pentagon. The worst experience of my life was selling the Pentagon.
mm,
Um, just unbelievable. And I think then I'd always been, I didn't even know what to describe my career as, but now in hindsight, you look at it and it's called innovation.
mm,
And I always tell the story that, George Cole was the inventor of this air shoe, and somebody else, Doug Fitchman, invented these thermoplastic carbon fiber that I was selling to the shoe company. But he was like in the composite business, they were selling them to make orthotics, and I took them to footwear. And so if you think about it this way, an inventor invented the pencil, and an inventor invented an eraser, and the innovator put the eraser on the pencil.
hmm
But nobody was talking about innovation that way in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. They would say, well, what do you do? And I don't get it. And they would see these successes where you would pull things from one thing and another, but they would always just think it was one-off luck, I guess. And finally, an old friend and a guy from Reebok was running Deckers Corporation, which owned UGG, and his name was Angel Martinez. And he said, hey, you're always the poacher. You're always coming in from the outside with these ideas. Why don't you come inside the company and lead our innovation and practice? And so they've never had an innovation practice at Deckers. And so I established that. And my job was to find new ideas, big ideas. And I'm an open innovation guy. I'm not smart enough to know that much, but I know no matter how smart you are or how talented your company is, there's more talent and more knowledge outside your company than can ever be
mm,
inside it.
hmm
And so go get it. The greatest company at doing that is, I think, Procter and Gamble under Levy. I
mm,
mean, his open innovation strategy just made Procter and Gamble a juggernaut.
mm,
They had more scientists than anyone else in that space, and I think they were still getting something like 50 to 60% of their ideas from outside the company.
mm,
And so one of the ideas I found was this brand called HOKA, when they had sold 800 pair of shoes. And being a runner, you look at that, and it was in the middle of the barefoot run movement. Born to Run was a book bestseller, and Grandma Tilly was healed running barefoot. And I was just old enough to have remembered running in Nikes when they were essentially barefoot.
hmm
The Oregon Waffle trainer, the Oregon Waffle racer. The Oregon Waffle racer is a barefoot shoe, and it hurt like hell to run in it.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was going to get any more comfortable in 2008 or 9 than it was in 1975. And so this Hoka comes along, and I remember Johnny Halverstadt from the Boulder Running Company sent it and said, this is a big idea, but they need a company to get in with them, or they're just going to get swallowed up, or run over. And he sent me a pair of shoes. I just bought a brand new pair of my 27th pair of gel Nimbus from Asics that I was going brand new.
Mm.
And I put on my Hokas. I went out and I literally had to stop and feel the pavement because I thought it was melting or soft.
Mm.
It felt as this optical illusion. Then I ran down this huge hill and I could just keep going faster and faster, and you didn't have to pull back. And I did that for 2 days, and I said, "This is incredible," because every other shoe I could wear any brand of shoes, and if I were blindfolded, you could barely tell the difference between a Nike and an Asics and a New Balance and Adidas. Some were harder, some were softer, but virtually indistinguishable. And but Hoka was different. And so the third day I go, well, I got that was interesting. I'm going to go back and wear my gel Nimbus. I got about 200 yards down the road and I went, I thought these were new. And I go, get about 250 yards and I go, this hurts like hell. Why am I doing this? I turned around, went back to my garage and put on my Hokas. About 4 days later, I do the same thing. I get 200 yards from home. I go, this hurts. Why am I doing this?
Mm.
Went back. That was the last day I ever ran anything that wasn't a Hoka for
Mm.
15
I'm
years.
sure that's a light bulb moment for you where you go, there's something here with this brand, this business, this product.
Yeah, and so then I called up the Hoka guys over in Annecy, France. They came over and at Deckers we invested in them. I think we invested $1 million in them before they had $1 million in revenue.
Mm.
Started supporting them and helped them with factory and then we once we invested, we started sort of co-developing. I mean, their idea, we would just use our resources and so that was a really fun thing because at that time, no running shoe brand had gone from 0 to 100 million in the United States in the last 40 years.
Mm.
None. And Hoka is the first brand to do it, and then I think On did it, which is interesting. But and the lawyers at Deckers were kind of on my butt because they said there's no intellectual property here. It's just this big shoe. I said, yeah, but you can always count on the fact that the footwear industry is, they're going to resist, and they're going to be loath to copy this.
Mm.
And it's really interesting that the first company that really embraced oversized beyond Hoka was Nike.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it brilliantly because they made oversize a racing shoe.
Yep.
Everybody was saying, "Oh, Hoka's just for fat old broken down men like me," and Nike put oversize in a racing shoe. Everybody else was poo pooing it. And boy, but once Nike did it, everybody did it, and now I mean, every shoe is a Hoka shoe now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a pretty fun experience.
So let me ask you this. So they invest $1 million. Uh,
Yeah.
how much do you think that became worth because of you telling them, "Hey guys, this they're onto something here."
Well, it's probably worth 2.5 to $4 billion now.
The Hoka brand.
Yeah.
But what do you think that investment that they made in Hoka was?
Well, they own it now.
Oh, so they came
W-
in and just said, "We'll
We
just."
bought it. So we had an agreement with the founders of Hoka that whenever they wanted to sell out, and a couple years later, they sold the entire company to Deckers. So
Mm.
it was one of the great acquisitions of all time.
So because I'm a dummy and I want to ask the question, did they give you a little bit of the scratch there? Come on, man, you were right there. You helped them with the deal. Come on, give them two
No, it was
percent.
it
Come
was
on, guys.
no, UGG was having a bad year, and I think that was the lowest bonus year I ever got. I think I got a $26,000 bonus, and I might have been the only guy in the company who got any bonus.
That is crazy. That's
But it was your
crazy.
job, and it was fun, and Onhill was a great leader in the sense that he let the innovation guys. He gave us the freedom to do things,
Mm.
and Uh, I mean, when I brought HOKA into Deckers, my recollection is that I took it to an innovation summit where I was presenting 8 or 10 ideas and we voted on them. There were 28 people in the room and HOKA got 2 votes, mine and On Hill's. Every single senior executive voted no. And these are smart people. But here's what this says about On Hill. On Hill didn't allow consensus or democracy to drive innovation or change.
Mm.
And the problem with most innovation or change is that you try to build a consensus. And I think if you're trying to change something that dramatically, uh, innovation should not be governed by democracy. It should be collaborative, but if you give every vice president in a company veto power over new ideas, you'll never get anything done. If you let the lawyers veto it, the manufacturing team veto it, the marketing team veto it, the advertising team veto it, the product development team veto it, you will get virtually nothing done, and that's essentially what happens. And On Hill's view was that nobody had to do what I wanted them to do from an innovation perspective, but they couldn't stop me.
Mm.
And because in most companies, if the VP of manufacturing says no, or the lawyer says there's no IP, it stops.
Hmm.
And On Hill really leveled the playing field. It's just not fair if you got to get yes from 26 people.
Hmm.
And I don't think most organizations understand that to this day.
Mm.
And I think our little innovation department at Deckers, I think we had a $2 million budget, and on one project at UGG, we saved $60 million and drove about 150 million in new revenue. And to this day, they're saving $60 million a year.
Mm.
And it found HOKA. And so I think our innovation team was paying its entire annual budget daily,
That's
or
amazing.
big. I mean it. I mean,
Well, I think the quote goes something like, the worst thing that a company can do is believe that the present day and the future are going to look similar, right? It's like assuming that what's going to happen in the future, and that paralyzes a lot of companies. I mean, the classic Kodak story, but a lot of tech companies too. Like
oh yeah,
they don't believe that the future is going to look different than it does today. So you're trying to
yep.
solve for like today problems, but today and future are going to be so different from each other.
Yeah, and Angel Martinez, Deckers, I put it on his desk, the HOKA shoe, and everybody else would comment, "Oh, that's uglier than hell. That's this. What are you thinking?" And Angel just leans back and he says, "Stuart, I'll bet that does what it looks like it does. I'll bet that thing provides tremendous cushioning." And then he said, "I think I've found the reason to get back in the athletic footwear business after 20 years of looking."
Mm.
That's pretty insightful.
Do you think that I don't know, did you run more than people on the team at that time? And do you think that
Did you what? Did I what?
did you run more?
No, you mean?
Because to me, if a
Oh,
lifelong runner, a guy who's qualified, for the Olympic trials, and I know he's out pounding the pavement doing like, I don't know what you were doing at that time, 7-10 miles a day, something like that, maybe less, maybe more. If you
less.
if you come to me and go, this is something, and I've done a lot of shoes, then I might go, okay. A guy who knows some running shoes knows that there's something here. That's when I'd go, all right, maybe that's anecdotal, but sometimes you have to trust the anecdote.
Well, I don't know whether he thought that or not. I think Angel respected my judgment as a runner and track record of innovating. But I'll tell you what was more powerful and meaningful to Angel and me than me being a runner was that Johnny Halverstadt, who owned the Boulder Running Company,
Okay.
one of the most successful running stores in America, sent it to us and said, "This is spell check for your feet. You guys got to look at this." Johnny Halverstadt ran a sub 8 minute 2 mile. He ran like a 8:42 2 mile.
Jeez.
He won the Commodores Marathon and set the record in South Africa for that, whatever that race is. that stood for 40 years. He was second in the Boston Marathon. He was on, I don't know, a half a dozen national championship teams at Oklahoma State in cross country and track. That guy, and he was selling running shoes every single day of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And when he sends you something, you better perk up, pay attention, and drop your ego. And so I mean, I think that coming from Johnny was far more critical than coming from Stuart.
Mm.
And I think Onhill was certainly tuned in enough and wise enough to say, hey, when Johnny Halverstadt sends you something, you better take a good hard look.
Mm.
I'd love to take all the credit, but
Well, it sounds like that individual stamp led you to go, let me see about this. And then you stamped it. And now it's like, hey, we got some smart people saying that this is something. So pay
but
attention.
when I wore it, let me tell you, I was all in,
Mm.
and it was not universally adopted. Let me say that.
Mm.
And people would come into my office. Oh, these are big, ugly shoes. Blah 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 blah. And I finally put a poster up on my door. I still have the PDF of it. And it says, why HOKA? It's the pounding, stupid.
Hmm. So where do you go after being with that company and helping them through this HOKA thing? I'm sure that was like an amazing ride for you to just watch that thing just go way up and to the right over time.
Yeah, well, I mean, shortly thereafter, I mean, the thing I loved about running footwear is making running footwear.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't feel good about everything, and and when you go out behind the factory and you see piles of foam, can you see what this is? Can you
Yep.
see that those are shoes?
Yep. I see the cutouts. It looks like a sole for those listening, cut out of a piece of foam.
Okay, yeah, and so if this was good enough to put in a shoe, the open space that's cut out, how good is this? It's just as good, right?
Yeah. For those listening, it looks like a baking pan sheet that you put dough down and you cut your little circles out and there's just a whole lot of dough left over.
Yep. The cookies are gone, but there's still dough.
Uh-huh.
And this dough is good, right?
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, there's enough of this dough left for me to make 2.5 billion midsoles a year.
I believe
This
that.
is one of the largest pollution problems because foam is plastic.
Yeah.
And so we figured out I basically walked behind the factory and said that's either a tremendous problem. I can tell you this, I didn't want to come home and show my children and grandchildren what was out behind the shoe factory, and I'll tell you damn straight, I've never seen any piles of foam in the sustainability report for any athletic shoe company ever.
Mm-hmm. And what
And
were
yet there's a
and most companies were just pitching that stuff.
burned or buried.
You can burn. I don't like that.
Well, you're breathing it.
I know that's why I don't like it. I'm
Well, and you look in some of the sustainability report of the big companies now, and they call it converting it to energy.
mm, I don't want to be in that building where they're heating the facility with it.
Well, they're not doing it at a facility; they're doing it at a big incinerator, right, or a big energy plant, not an incinerator. They're burning it as to create electricity or whatever. But still,
Mm-hmm.
it's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's nasty.
And so I thought that is either a big problem or a big opportunity. And I chose to say, I think there's an opportunity there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we found a way to transmogrify that foam. You used the baking analogy. We're basically making Rice Krispie treats.
Okay. Yep.
We take the skeleton from your cookies, we chop them up. I've got little granules here. These are pellets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very low energy way. You just mechanically, this is just like grinding corn back on the ranch.
Mm-hmm.
And then think about a mold or a shape of your midsole or your insole as being your sheet pan, and you're going to make Rice Krispie treats. This waste foam that we've ground up becomes the Rice Krispies. I don't need to cure it or cook it because Kellogg's already did.
Mm.
So that takes less heat, less energy, less water, right?
So
It's done.
you're not kind of melting this into the mold
Right.
because
We're just dropping it in.
it's already
It's already
fine.
cooked.
Yep, and you can just
And
add
so,
a sealant of some sort.
and yet we're still using it as foam because it still will compress. And now we have to find sugar to glue it back together. And we have a proprietary manufacturing process. We own the factory ourselves.
Whoa.
And yeah, I built a factory during COVID. I don't even want to talk about it.
In
And
the US or overseas
no,
or
all of this foam is in Asia. You couldn't do this in the United States, despite what the president of the United States may believe. It's a U.S. patent. We had to go build our own factory because we wanted to control the technology,
Mhm.
and we did that. And so then I go out just like with the air shoe. I go out. Isn't this a great idea? We can make foam parts. They're going. I don't think that works. I don't think you can do that.
You'd think they would start to
So
believe you after some period of time.
I guess there's a little bit of my ego that would say, I've been doing this for 46 years. I've had some pretty nice wins. You'd think you'd get a little credit, but it seems like you're still the new kid in class and a dummy. You get no bonus points for being right in the past
Well,
from people who haven't been right in the past.
you
But anyway,
you call me when you got your next innovation. I'll be an investor. I've heard enough. If you tell me this is going to work, I've heard enough.
so then I say, well, okay, I can prove it works by making insoles. And so you've seen our insoles.
Hmm.
And rather than, you might as if you're going to make an insole, better make a better one.
Okay.
Everybody puts fabric on insoles, and we do too, right? But but you think about if you run, if have you ever hiked?
Yeah, of course.
What happens to your toes when you hike downhill for a long time?
They're going to start to hurt.
Why? Because they're going to jam into the front of your shoes.
Pressure.
Why? Because you're sliding into the front of your shoes.
Hmm.
Now, do you think if you slide into the front of your shoes, are you sliding when you go uphill? Sure.
Probably a little bit. You're probably sliding all over the place, little by little.
Yeah. Are you sliding sideways? Of course. So I'm running up in these trails in Santa Barbara, and my shoe plants because we spend a fortune on the traction of shoes. But before I can go up that trail, my shoe stops, then my foot slides sideways. Then I wonder if my knee's going to go or my ankle's going to go.
All right, right. I know.
And then I'm running downhill and my toes are slamming in. I go, why am I sliding around in the shoes? Oh, well, we have this lacing system. You keep tying that tighter. Well, that'd be as effective as putting seat belts on the outside of a car.
Mm.
So on this insole, we call it a non-slip insole. I've got my little sock here, but if I put this on here, it won't slip or slide because there's a different coefficient of friction between this top here. If I put it on a normal insole,
Is that
I slide all over.
is that just a normal sock or is that your
That's a normal sock.
Okay.
No, that's a normal any sock.
Wasn't sure if you had, special sock, special insole.
No, no, turns every sock into a grip sock.
Huh.
And so then a couple baseball players, Mike Yastrzemski sees it and he starts giving it to Giants. And then coach calls me. Well, now we have it on over 1,000 professional athletes, half the NFL,
Mm.
and anybody that doesn't want to slip and slide around in their shoes because they want to be um, faster and stable. So one of these professional sports teams, they're like kind of skeptical. They tested our insole with 200 professional athletes. 90% of those athletes ran faster, 80% started faster, 80% stopped faster, and 80% were more stable from the knee to the ground.
Whoa.
Why would you slide around inside your shoes? It's dumb.
What sport is that biggest with right now? Because I imagine that this has got to be going to basketball and
Well,
soccer too. I played soccer, and
well,
the touch on the ball is
yeah.
so important.
Well, we got started with pro baseball players. I mean, you're watching the World Series, and I'm seeing guys from both teams. One of the guys that had to start really fast to get an out he's bought 20 pair of our insoles.
That's cool.
But I would say baseball but football is catching up fast because half the teams now have them. And then it's really picking up ground in pickleball.
Oh,
And if we could find a way to tell golfers, it would be picking up there.
that makes sense. There's a lot
And
of twisting of your feet and
And we've got one of the most prestigious basketball programs, college basketball programs in Southern California, just ordered the other day. Got several SEC basketball programs, got SEC football, Big Ten football teams buying. So it's growing. But I really got in the insole business because I couldn't sell these brands on the idea.
Hmm.
And we also make midsoles, right? The cushioning. So this is a collaboration we did with Allbirds. So
That's
we made this. This came out in
that's a
August.
beautiful shoe.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, a young kid made a golf shoe, and we put our insole inside it. They match.
Hmm.
But kind of the big news for us is I thought surely if you could sell insoles, that companies would say you can make flip flops, sandals, slides. Nope. Well, we see that insole, Stuart, but I don't think you can make slides or sandals. And so, a former colleague of mine at Deckers, she ran the UGG design and merchandising for UGG. She said, Stuart, the heck with it. Why don't we make our own shoe brand? And so she came up with this idea to make the Flex footwear line.
Okay.
And every piece of the shoe that I'm showing you, there's sheepskin at the top, but we salvage the sheepskin from the skins that the other people throw away because they're not perfect enough.
Hmm.
And there's stretch marks on the leather. It's genuine leather, it's beautiful leather, but other brands would be throwing that away. So every element of this shoe, it has our recycled midsole in it for cushioning and support. It's going to go 1,000 miles, not going to break down like others. The outsole we buy, but it has recycled content in it. The sheepskin is salvaged, the leather is salvaged. So it's probably the least impactful shoe on the environment. And you know what happened to us a week ago?
Hmm.
Oprah named this one of her favorite things for 2025.
Wow, that's amazing, man. Congratulations.
It's a big deal. So I think we may be the smallest footwear brand or the youngest footwear brand to ever be named one of Oprah's. Look at this. Here's Oprah's magazine. And right here.
Yep. So did
So
did that instantly, was it like a flood of orders coming to the website, or has it
it's been a step change for us, let me say that.
I
And
was
this is the doldrums of selling, but our partners, it has allowed us to get into stores like Nordstrom. They pre-ordered,
mhm,
we had 6 weeks. We had to go make a lot of shoes in 6 weeks, and
mhm.
we made them because we own the factory. But partners like Nordstrom and our Metro, our Amazon partner, and our other key accounts, we were able to tell our accounts, certain key accounts, although it's highly confidential, so you could just tell big accounts, and it has changed the trajectory of our company dramatically.
That's amazing, man.
But you know what's more fun for me? It proves that recycled can be beautiful, it can be stylish, it can be fashionable, it is comfortable, and it's going to provide cushioning for a long time. And it proves that you don't have to make shoes that are toxic to the environment or as toxic to the environment if you care. And these are competitive priced and so forth. So that's kind of fun.
What's it been?
So that brings us,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
I was just gonna ask, what's it been like just trying to ramp up that production? I mean, that probably just changes life a lot. You gotta produce a lot, you gotta buy a lot of more raw materials, a lot of cost.
Well, owning the factory and going through all the struggles to build a factory during COVID, I have a great team. The Blumaka team that is in China and Asia are wonderful people, dedicated people. And, when you call them and say, we're going to have to ramp up orders by a factor of, 10 in the next 6 weeks, they did it. They delivered every shoe we ordered on time and on budget. We were 90, they shipped us complete to 99.7% of what we ordered, we got.
Mhm,
And they did that in record time because they're committed, they're part of the family. And of course, all of this is predicated on a US patent, which I think when people talk about tariffs, they really don't get it. I mean, we're in Asia, not to take jobs away from America. That this material isn't available in Asia. We have a US patent. if you want to encourage U.S. technology, you should lower tariffs on products that include U.S. patents.
Mm,
It would be a great way to incentivize people in that part of the world to honor your patents, and it would be a great way to have um, U.S. technologies become the preeminent technology in a field, because it's a way to access the U.S. market if you have a U.S. patent. And but I don't expect our politicians to understand that, let alone the people who vote for them.
yeah, I'm in the same boat. I have a patent on a all glass food storage container, and nobody in the United States makes glass. Like,
Right,
if you are like building a rocket ship and you need like a windshield, that's like about the only glass that's made in the United States. So
right.
it's challenging. Um, you were starting to say where that takes you to now, kind of the next phase of development for you and the
Well,
company.
we're just building this business, and we hope. I've just got to convince you and your wife or significant other that we can make great products from this recycled foam. It's tough because recycling has generally meant lower quality or whatever. Well, I'm telling you, this shoe and my insoles are higher quality than what you will get from 99.9% of the virgin foams made out there.
Mm.
And we're competitive in price. And so, just sharing that message that you can, with this Blumaka foam technology, you can do good, and feel good about what you're buying,
Yeah.
or feel better about what you're
I
buying.
think you can do good and do well at the same time. That's the best way that I've kind of heard it said.
And so it all goes back to the ranch. We've been ranching out there for 150 years. And why do we take care of the land? Because if you want to be there another 150 years, you better take care of the land.
Hmm.
And I see no reason on earth why we should be throwing away enough beautiful, high quality, perfectly good foam to make 1.2 billion shoes, or 5 billion insoles.
Mm.
And I see no reason on earth that we have to do that. And and now we just got to convince companies that and consumers that this is an option, and that they want to do it. Nobody's going to pay me more for a recycled product.
Hmm. Right. Right.
Uh, um, but we happen to be making better products from recycled materials.
Mm. So the $1 billion question: could you see yourself taking this recycled material and going into running shoes or sports shoes, or going directly into it?
Well, uh, look, I think if you're going to go win the Boston Marathon, your number one priority is lightweight, highly resilient material, because we're aggregating materials, right? We're putting the Rice Krispies in with the sugar.
Hmm.
The Rice Krispies alone are always going to be lighter than the Rice Krispies with the sugar.
Got it. Yep.
And so if you're trying to win the Boston Marathon, that's a great use of virgin foam.
Hmm.
Great application for virgin foam.
Hmm.
If you're going to go walk to the beach, if you're going to walk around shopping, if you're going to go for a hike, if you're going to um, go to work all day at a factory, using virgin foam for those applications is environmental malpractice, because we can build a better product for sandal, flip flop, slides, uh, skate shoes, casual shoes with all birds, um, better insoles for DAPS pickleball shoes. They
Mm.
have our insole in there. So it's really not about going into the running space, and going up against Nike is like, I'm not going to go poke the tiger.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just places where you have to put it, and there's places where you shouldn't. And there's just very few shoes that require virgin foam.
Mm-hmm.
But
And there's
Performance running is one of them.
well, there's very few people trying to win the Boston Marathon. There's like
Well,
10.
well, that's that's the point.
Yeah.
I think we could make a really good running shoe for somebody that's running a 3 hour marathon. We're pounding, but they all want to look like the guy that's running a 2 hour marathon, or woman that's running a 2:20 marathon. So, runners are, but if you really think about pounding, and the other thing they don't tell you about running shoes is most of that cushioning fails in 150 to 200 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you're paying, at this point, you're paying over $1 a mile for cushioning.
Is there,
And
I just,
with my system, we could make a running shoe that the cushioning would last for 1,000 miles, and so you'd be paying 20 to 25 cents a mile for cushioning.
I was just thinking because I got the innovator here, is there a system, or have people tried some sort of a system where you can like replace the bottom of the shoe, like a click on, click off? I'm just kind of thinking.
Yeah, Turn Tech back in the day, pretty innovative guy. He used to run Brooks Shoe Company, but he was trying to do that with outsoles. But interestingly enough, nobody has found a great way to do that. There's an innovator named Rob Lighton who has a very interesting quick attach system, um, but no one has picked up on it. But nobody has found a quick attach way to replace midsoles. But if you think about it, many of the shoe companies probably aren't highly motivated to do that,
Mm,
because selling a replacement midsole for $50 or whatever is is probably not going to go over well with the shareholders.
yeah. Well, hey, that's why someone without shareholders and someone who could figure it out. And
I agree.
yeah,
I agree with that.
well,
It's a complicated shape to attach and detach. It's just that upper shape. It's not like a tennis racket,
yeah,
but somebody will figure it out.
yeah. And then it's just, do people really want this? Like, okay, I'm saving maybe 50 to $70. Like, how much, I don't know. Who knows?
Shoes are cultural, right? Shoes are cool. So there's that too. People buy shoes for emotional reasons, uh, as much as functional reasons. And I mean, that's what Leah Larson taught me with that. I would have never made something this cute or even thought about it. Um, I'm kind of a high function comfort pig, and she had the sensibility to say, "Hey, it's got to be cute."
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. That, I looked at it and I was like, yeah, that's probably like a shoe my girlfriend might wear. Not me, probably, but maybe my girlfriend.
Yeah.
So,
No, no. And if you want to win brownie points for the holidays, you need to call me.
you got my order, man. Don't worry. Well, Stuart, thank you so much, man. This has been super fun, dude. I feel like you could write an amazing book, and I think that people would
Ooh,
would read that.
really?
Oh, 100%,
Uh,
man. Dude, I mean, look, I read some of those running books that you talked about. First and foremost, you're going to be able to sell to the runners. You're going to be able to sell to the inventors and the business people, and then you're just going to hit maybe some general audience. I don't want to blow smoke up your butt and tell you you're going to, sell a million copies. I can't promise that. That's a challenge, but dude,
yeah,
it sounds
I
like
just
you've
don't know what the theme of a book would be. All roads start in Nebraska or something. I don't know. No, I've thought about writing a book, and then I go in a library, and that desire leaves me. But I don't know if I have anything to say that would be meaningful. But
I think
that's very kind of
I
you.
think you're selling yourself a little bit short there. I think you've got a great story that would hit multiple different audiences. And
Yeah.
you and me have probably read
Okay.
some of the same running books and went, "Wow, that was fun. That was cool." I was just gonna say, James Dyson. I'm sure you kind of know this about James Dyson, but he
Yeah.
was a runner and
Yeah.
he was an inventor, and he failed
Yes, he was.
thousands of times with his vacuum cleaner before he made it work. So I think that there's a story to be told there. But that's my 2 cents for you,
Yeah.
Stuart.
Well, thanks. Well, if I knew the line of demarcation between stupid stubbornness and professional persistence, I'd probably be a lot wealthier man.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end it. Stuart, where can people find you? Where can people find the products?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Stuart Jenkins, Stuart, Jenkins. And then Blumaka is BLUMAKA.com. That's where you can find our insoles and about that. Blumaka, by the way, means blue earth. Maka is the Native American word for earth in Nebraska.
Mhm.
And Flex Footwear is Flex Footwear, FLEKS footwear.com.
Mhm.
And we would love to earn your support.
Blumaka and Flex both on Amazon. I'm an Amazon guy, so I got to call it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful, man.
And we're happy to have you buy it there. But we also have our own website
All
where we
right.
get a little
Well,
bit of
yeah.
margins,
Yeah,
but
I know. I know.
uh, and we ship. We're very reliable shippers.
Beautiful,
But
man.
anyway, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you, and call back anytime and we can continue the conversation.
Yeah.
I think I need to interview you and hear your story. That
Yeah.
might be more interesting than mine.
I don't know about that, but I would love to have you back, Stuart. Thank you so much, and hopefully 12 months from now, you got a new product that's another one of Oprah's favorite things, and you're like, dude, I can't even talk. We're just trying to keep up with the man.
I hope so.
Thanks, man. Have a great night.
Take care.